It's now time to welcome these very special guests, Armand, Ellie and Maurizio. Now, you've each invited someone very special, someone very important to you. Maurizio Salvatore Ruggeri from Italy. Ruggeri, yes. Sorry about excuse my pronunciation. Armand is Bernard van der Bosch from Netherlands.
Yes.
Better pronunciation?
Well, it's very good.
And Ellie David Ouanoulou from Paris.
Perfect.
Fantastic. So firstly, hello and a very big and special welcome to our guests. Now, all three of you have been patients or related families of Maurizio, Ellie and Armand in an intensive care unit, so you all have that incredible connection. Armand, should we start with your guest?
Yes.
Why did you invite Mr. van der Bosch?
Well, I invited Bernard van den Bosch because he is the husband of a patient that was in our unit. And I want to pay attention to the fact that the family is part of the patient and the patient is part of the family, and a very important role of the family during the admission of a patient.
And what are your questions to Mr.
Well,
van der Bosch?
if I may address to Bernard. Bernard, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it very much, and that you are willing to share your experience, because your wife was admitted at the ICU after a long-standing disease with an acute deterioration. And I think we are all very curious to know that you tell us about your experience and the lessons that we can learn as doctors and nurses from what you went through during this very difficult period.
Yeah. To start, Doctor, thank you for the invitation. I want to show my wife, because we're talking about her, and it's very important to show who she is. She's here with our granddaughter, and this picture was taken one day before she went to hospital. And I took this picture to hospital because I want to show all the nurses and all the doctors that this woman who was now at ICU was very vivid and ready for life and very fond of her grandchildren and her children. We have 4 children together. So I brought a lot of pictures to show everyone this is not someone who is going to die, this is someone who wants to live. And that was very important for me, but later I heard also for all the nurses and all the doctors that she had an image how she was before she entered the ICU.
Yeah, well, she was at one moment, then she was admitted, and we went through a very difficult period. Can you tell us what it was like for you as a family member, as a husband, as a father, to have this happened and to see how this happened, and what you would like to say about how the doctors and nurses responded to all this, to you?
My wife, Gerda is her name, was ill for 12 years. And we know it was incurable. So we were aware that one day we had to say goodbye to her, but when we were so close to that moment, it was still a big shock. And when we were at the hospital in Amsterdam, we met a doctor, and I had a first conversation with him about the situation of my wife, and he told what not to do. So in case of a heart failure, we don't give her a treatment. In case of a problem with her kidneys, we don't do dialysis. And I thought, okay, but what are you going to do? So then he said to me, we are from the Department of Realistic Conversations. And I know I am at the ICU. This is a realistic situation. So please tell me, what is the situation of my wife? And please make her better, because I love her so much.
Yeah, that was
the mother of our 4 children. We couldn't miss her. But it looks like we spoke a different language, that treating doctor and me. And at that time, I went to the team leader of the ICU and I said, I really have a problem with this doctor. And I know that my wife is very ill, but help me, because I don't want to give my energy to a doctor which is not helping me, but to my wife who is very ill. And in that moment, Dr. Gebes, you came on stage and said, from now on, every day at 11 o'clock, we have a meeting and I will take you step by step what the situation is of your wife. And that helped me so much. But from that time on, I was aware of her situation. And I never forget that you took me to her bed and showed me something of her situation that made me aware that we have to say goodbye.
Yes,
so,
because we did.
You took me by the hand, and I know it is your job, and it is for you more than a job, but it is our life, and you were aware of that situation.
Okay, well, thank you very much, because, well, we didn't mention it explicitly, but there was, your wife sadly died during this admission of the intensive care. And so what you tell us, in fact, it's very important that the doctor goes along with the family member to explain and see how the doctor can help, and feels with you about what it is, well, as good as the doctor can do, what it is all about to go through this very difficult period. Well, thank you very much, Bernard, for sharing this very important.
Thank you so much for reminding us about how important the empathy in everything that we do is really a key value. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, and the human aspect, as you mentioned before, I think is very important to highlight it. And thank you so much for sharing your testimony, a very tough one to share. We appreciate that. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, Mr. Van den Bosch. Now, Ellie, could you tell us more about who you selected today and why?
Well, there are many aspects with Mr. Wanunu, who is actually Dr. Wanunu. He is a patient, he's a doctor, and he's one that has taught a lot on his ICU experience, not only as a patient, but also by his eyes, we have learned and understood how much the family members were important, as just our patient from and family, a relative from the Netherlands has pointed out. So maybe I should pass to Dr. Wanunu to has his experience as a patient, and maybe from all of us and from the bottom of our heart, thank you for teaching us and for giving us the main messages that can be very important for nurses and all healthcare providers in the ICU team.
Thank you, Eli. The day I came back to life after 25 days in a coma, I asked myself the question as a doctor, what psychological state am I in, or rather, what stage am I in? We have all learned as doctors that the patient goes through 5 phases. First, denial. No, that must be a mistake. 2, anger. This is not fair. 3, negotiation. It's not just yet. I still have some business to take care of. Depression. There is no point in fighting. And 5, resignation. Okay, since I have no choice. Honestly, I didn't find myself in any of these situations. My trauma happened 2 years before, when I lost my oldest daughter in 2018. My colleague, Dr. Séverine Wanunu-Boisiz. I defined life as a mission and a life project, that of perpetuating her memory and guiding her daughter to her total autonomy. So I lived this return to life as an injection to continue my mission. I was still barely able to stand up with the worker and asked the doctors at the rehabilitation center if I could go if I could go out the weekend to say Kaddish, prayer for the dead at home, since the synagogues were closed. You can imagine the refusal I received in return. Then one of our colleagues told me, I'll take responsibility, but I would like a text message every hour. Don't ever be alone in the bathroom. Don't take risks of falling. Use the walker and the wheelchair, etc. She understood that for me, living is not only a kidney, a heart, a lung that work. It was what we put into life, a passion, a reason to live, a project, a mission. I thank her very much today. In intensive care, I also have a chance to meet extraordinary people. The doctors listen to me, but it's true that with the tracheotomy, I couldn't speak, so they read my lips and the hand do the rest. I met an assistant who shared my passion for ultrasound in general medicine and with whom I communicated by email. I met nurses and care assistants who understood that the person in front is not a disease, but a person in his own rights who suffers from a disease. Respect for privacy, mouse care, moisturizing creams, nail care and shampoos. On this subject, it was a whole ceremony with Zen music in background and scalp massage was with the Cleopatra bath. Since then, after 6 months of work, I have applied this notion of taking care instead of just curing. I know that most care tackles a stony tongue and sore dry mucous membranes. I know that wellness care go hand in hand with pathology care and should not be neglected. I know that dialysis is exhausting, and knowing this can help you to prepare for it. I know that a daily appointment with a visitor is necessary because when you wake up, you know that the day has a rhythm and that the wait is as precious as the meeting, however short it may be. I know that the family needs to have news, good or bad, and I was lucky enough to be in a department where the professor called my wife daily and assiduously. Aware of our fragility, our vulnerability, and our dependence on others, this ordeal was for me a fantastic lesson of humility, humanity, and otherness. Thank you, Professor Antoine Vieillard-Baron, for what you are and what you have done for me. Thank you, Professor Elias Goulet, for having taken use of me and surrounded my wife Brigitte with all this friendly support. Thank you, Dr. Celia Resch, for your unbelievable but so responsible authorization to leave the hospital, which did me so much good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I think that we learn from understanding your entire background and all the messages you are passing to the entire interprofessional ICU team. And we learn from you, and we say thank you for the bottom of our hearts. And congratulations for being so wonderful today.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ouanounou. Now over to you, Maurizio. Could you tell us why you chose the speaker that you did today?
Yes, Salvatore Ruggeri is one of our foremost former patients. Hello, Salvatore. And we are very affectionate to him. My whole team is very affectionate to him. We are very attached to him because Salvatore was one of the patients of the first wave in Lombardy, which was a real tsunami. We were not prepared there, and a lot of things happened. And unfortunately, one of the things that happened was that there were rules about completely forbidding access to hospital from external people. So unfortunately, we had at the very beginning, we couldn't have families, relatives being there at the bedside. And if you ask me and my team, that has been the most difficult thing for us, but it's been very difficult also for patients. And but I would like to hear from you, Salvatore. You made a very good recovery now, but can you tell us what you remember about your experience in intensive care, the good and the bad?
Yes. First of all, Professor Cecconi, thank you very much to you and your team for what you have done for me. Without you and your team, I was not here today. And taking example from the other gentleman, I wish to show you my wife, Barbara, and I wish to show you my sons, Max and Luca. They suffered from my infection in the same way because they were at home and they were unable to visit me. I was recovered at Humanitas Hospital, as you well know, for 72 days, of which about 50 in intensive care. So I was most of the time sleeping in coma, and the only people who gave me comfort was you, Professor Cecconi, female Dr. Elena Costantini, and the nurses. When I was awake, because most of the time I did sleep, and the memory I have is that I had hundreds of hallucinations. I call hallucination, maybe it's wrong, but say memory. But it was not a real memory, something that did not exist. For example, my wife bought a new car while I was in the hospital, a Toyota, for 77,000 euro, and I didn't know. Sorry?
Are you sure it didn't happen?
No, it didn't. Absolutely not. I was in Monte Carlo in a hotel with my wife, and the police from Monte Carlo arrived and informed me that there was a mandate of arrest, to be arrested under a legal act issued by Romania, because I didn't pay an invoice of 20,000 euro. So they said you cannot return in Italy because you will be in the jail in Monte Carlo. Many things, many.
And we discussed about this memory, but this is very important, Haley, and for everyone that listened, because now we kind of joke because Salvatore made a full recovery, but actually we sometimes refer to this as delirium in intensive care, and you can have these hallucinations. But for the patient in this moment, this is reality. So it's very confusing and very stressful. And if you don't have family there, we know that actually it can happen more often. So
of course, it must be very distressing.
Yeah.
Correct, but I can continue for hours and hours to tell you story, but there is no time, so I stop here. But the only comfort again was from the doctors and nurses. The other problem that I suffered was that when I left intensive care unit and I was transferred to the rehabilitation, the first week was terrible. I was unable to stand. I was unable to even stay seated on a chair. because I had very high palpitation. So the first week, I believed that never I will recover the normal life. But fortunately, another miracle happened. The miracle was that I started slowly, in about 2 weeks, to walk a little bit, to go in the restroom, and after a total of 72 days, I went home with my legs. And this was a very good news, because when I arrived at home without wheelchair, without anything, I went in the garden, in my garden, my house, walking myself, of course with the assistance of my lovely wife, but I was able, in about 1 month, after 1 month from the exit from the hospital, I am an entrepreneur, I went to my company to meet my people. This was the day of my birthday. I went over there. Of course, I lost 16 kilos when I came from the hospital. Unfortunately, now I got 17, but that's okay. But now I work, I drive, I eat, I travel. I say I live a normal life.
I cannot tell you how important it has been for all my team, because at the very beginning we knew very little of the virus. We didn't know how people that were very sick like you, how they could have recovered afterwards, and you've been so kind to keep us informed about your recovery. That has been very important for us, and it's something that, as we know, it doesn't happen just with COVID. In intensive care, when you leave intensive care, you start a journey that takes months, sometimes years, to have a full recovery, if you can get a full recovery to good quality of life. But thank you for sharing this story with us, Salvatore. It's great to see you like this, with your kilos back, but you look very well.
Thank you very much, Professor Cecconi, to you, and particularly to all your team, and particularly to the Dr. Costantini Elena, who was very kind. When no one was close to me, excluding the nurse, she came and comforted me a lot, and informed my family, because my family, the only information was through the telephone. Every day, when the telephone was ringing, they wait, because there were 1,000 people die every day, so they were waiting. My father or my husband is still alive or die. It was 1 second of a terrible time. But thank you very much, and also I wish all the best to your convention.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Mr. Urigelli, and thank you to everyone who's shared their testimonies today. And of course, thank you around this table here today for this Congress, because they are testament to your hard work and your the very human aspect that is involved in your job that sometimes may be overlooked. So thank you to everyone who's participated, and thank you, gentlemen. We're now going to move on to Ellie, because you discussed a very important focus during your career, which is patient and family research. Can you tell us more about your approach and, of course, your findings?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I believe that a lot has been said when we listen to patients and to family members. We need to understand that the ICU experience from a patient point of view and a family point of view is only an experience from, we need to learn, us, the interprofessional team, nurses, intensivists, doctors, and other allied professionals. So first, there is 2 concepts that are parallel. One is the patient-centered care. Everything we do for the patient, we analyze the situation, we make a diagnosis, we do a therapeutic trial, we estimate outcomes, and we look for taking the patient to the best of his outcomes, with survival being our hope. But sometimes patients don't survive, and we are still here until the end of the life, and we have all the things we can do to consider that this is not a technical failure, this is life. end of life is life. And we have the family-centered care. The family-centered care is not the same approach because it's based on the experience of family members. We are with vulnerable people, people who are themselves at higher risk of being frail, higher risk of dying themselves, because we know that it's not so uneventful to have someone in the ICU, and they have specific needs that we need to address. We need to understand their needs, and not two family members have the same needs, but still family members have common needs. One of those is information and communication. And the European Society of Intensive Care is paying a lot of attention on that. There are awards that are encouraging doctors and nurses to do more, to provide the best possible for family members and for patients. Well, everything we will do for family members will be a strength for patients, and everything we will do for patients will be good for family members. This attention that we give to family members and to improve our communication skills, it's something that the society, ESICM, has involved a lot of energy since years. Nurses and doctors know that they need to be together to provide the best for family members. Communication is not a monologue, and communication is not a dialogue. It's much more than that. It's improving our skills and our ability to meet family needs. So what we do is that we are first looking at what is done, and the impressive thing is that so many things are done on a daily basis to improve what we do for patients and family members that we still need to acknowledge it, and we need to recognize what is done. It's a huge amount of things. You know, an intensivist, everyone knows that he's, the major skill is when he intubates well. But intubating, it's much less time that talking to family members. And still we need to understand that the two are very useful. They are not opposed to each other, but they are very much aligned. Once you did something, you need to do the other one. So understanding what is done and acknowledging it is also encouraging healthcare providers to do more and to do maybe better. The other thing is to understand from variability from our different countries. Across the country, as you know, many countries are, more than 100 countries are affiliated to ESICM, and understanding from the variation is an opportunity to learn. I will learn what is performed in Denmark, I will learn what is performed in Italy, I will also bring what I do, and in my country, in my ICU, in my department, and from all of us, we are going to gather all of that to be better and to provide better. So ESICM is also committed to improve that. I didn't say that family members also suffer. They can suffer less if we are better, if we make them understand better, if we increase their satisfaction, if we are able to reduce their symptoms of anxiety, depression, and stress. And we are able to do that. So improving our communication skills is a very, very easy way to reduce post-ICU burden that has been named post-ICU syndrome, family or patients, the PICS, post-intensive care syndrome. So the European Society entered into a program to learn more from the practices, to know more from the targets for improvements, and to take a lot of all people do to gather it and to improve our practices together.
You actually mentioned that earlier, Maurizio, that the role of intensive care professionals goes beyond providing care, but also relaying information and communicating with the patients. And I think it's, as you said, it's the role that the European Society is really kind of developing as well. Now, if I'm right in believing, you have a short film that you wanted to show, which summarises actually the approach you wish to generalise within the society.
It is also about maybe showing to people what can happen in an intensive care unit, because we are quite different from other specialties. You decide maybe to go and see your cardiologist, or you decide to go and see your chest physician for a follow-up. Often in intensive care you end up there because you have an emergency and we take care of that. But most often people, they cannot plan that, and it's basically everyone is unprepared. So what we wanted to do is to provide a series of resources to help future patients maybe, or their families, to understand what is an intensive care, not just in terms of technology, but also in terms of people. So the ICU team and the relationship that we discussed just now, and if you've seen the testimony of the family and the patient. It's all about that. It's about this relationship, and so that's what we try to do.
And we have a short video to demonstrate that.
As a medical doctor at the ICU, I'm part of the healthcare team taking care for patients.
We work together as a single team with patients and families.
We try to provide the best care for you, to work in your best interest.
Bring into the care that we provide in the ICU.
I will be there every day, every night, all the time.
Il messaggio che posso mandare è un messaggio di fiducia e di speranza.
Quality of communication has an impact on the family's experience both during the patient's ICU stay and in the months that follow.
We are concerned by how you are doing, whoever you are, and whatever is your relation with the patient.
No matter how ill the patient, don't give up hope.
Some family members suffer from symptoms of anxiety, of depression. Some feel lost or even disoriented. So don't forget to take care of yourself.
Experiencing an ICU stay can be difficult. Understanding technology and treatments that you've never seen before is something not easy to understand.
Well, thank you, Maurizio, Armand and Ellie. It was a real pleasure being with you today for this 2021 edition of Lives. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to close this opening session. So thank you to all of you watching for your extraordinary work and commitment each and every day. I think we cannot thank you enough with everything we've witnessed and been through. So on behalf of all the team, we wish you a great event. Gentlemen, do you have any closing words?
Yes, well, I would like to say that I just hope that everybody has a lot of fun and that they will get a lot of energy from it when they swim like a dolphin through the program and find their way to see the things that interest them most.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank you, Heli, for being a great host, and Armand, Ellie, the families, the patient has been really a great highlight of this opening for me too. It was very moving to have them with us. And really to thank you all for watching us, and I hope you enjoy and have fun in the next 3 days of Lives 2021.